And after 31 years, sounds like you went through a lot of crazy times, some good.
Yes.
Why? Why retire now?
Boom! Who do we have today?
Todd Tomlinson.
Dude's the ultimate dude down in the panhandle. You know what living room I'm sitting in?
Looks like a TV show.
It is a TV show from right around the era that you were hired.
My first property account was Janet Descant, a condo.
That's awesome. So Todd,
Yeah,
what is the number one piece of advice that you give anybody coming into this industry with your 31 years of knowledge?
Todd Tomlinson.
Yes.
To the insurance dudes.
Welcome to the dudes.
The hardest question. Dude.
Great to be here. Great to be here. I watch you guys all the time.
Awesome. So Todd is second generation agent?
Yes, sir.
Second generation agent, building, you retired, and dude, what, 31 years? Gonna drop some secrets.
You don't want like that.
I know. It's crazy. Where does it go?
Yeah, when I came in, when I went to hiring class for our captive company, they told me from being from Florida, just shut your mouth, keep your mouth shut. Just they ask you from Florida, shake your head. Yep, okay, good. Because I came in as a direct hire. So they were phasing out the stores and I came in. So when I go up there, I was the only one at the time from Florida. Because keep in mind, the captive program was changing to where the exclusive program was coming in. So we were one of the last employee classes there. I think there was one more in Florida that we had after that, but we were the last class to come in as a employee agent.
So come in and shut your mouth.
Yeah, we knew nothing about what was going to happen in that. No one mentioned anything. Hey, you're the last class, or just the fact that. And then once we got in the field, they said, "Oh, by the way, there's no more employee agents coming on." I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. Nothing wrong with that. So, but when I came in, when I got out of hiring class, I'm sorry?
What year was that?
1990.
1990.
I would have been hired 3 years sooner. I couldn't pass the damn track test, because I was single. They wanted military and they wanted engineers. They wanted a different mindset as to go into it. And not that I couldn't answer a test. I mean, I graduate all A's and B's from college. It wasn't like I didn't know how to take a test, but when they do a psychological test on you and they want a different answer of what they're asking the question, it's a little bit different on the outcome. So that's when it was really hard to get hired by the company. Then
gotcha.
It was like just show up and hey, let's do it.
I'm gonna give you a test.
Hired.
You know what?
Yes.
You know what living room I'm sitting in since we forgot the first question.
Looks like a TV show.
It is a TV show from right around the era that you were hired at the company.
Give me a clue.
The main character was out of this world.
I know what it is.
What is it?
The main character eats cats.
Eats cats.
Eats cats.
He's kind of a stuffed animal.
He's an alien.
Oh, Elf.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Good old Elf.
Same thing. I was waiting for him to pop in. I was waiting to pop in right there on the in the doorway or something. So yeah.
I didn't realize he ate cats. Forgot about that.
Remember that? That was good. Okay. Now let's go back.
Yeah.
To the company.
So you got in.
So when I came in, like I said, they were phasing out the Sears. Oops, can I say that? They were phasing out the Sears stores. So at the time, when we came in, I had friends of mine that got hired a little before me, but they were in the Sears store. So at that time wasn't a bad.
You're not necessarily saying that this is associated with any Sears stores.
No, that was the captive at the time. That's what they had. So they also had some other things too. So it could be anything. But with that said,
business, Greg.
They phased that out. So when I came in with two other agents, one being my dad, another agent at the time. So there was a 3-man office at the time. You could have them. There were some 4-man offices too at the time, but really they frowned on those. So really it was a 3-man office. And we did that.
What was the difference between a 3 and a 4-man office? What was the line that was like, you know what?
1.
3's the magic. 4 sucks.
Just different if you could accommodate them because, you know, in the mid 80s is when they launched their program. You know, the certain initials that we can say has OA in it. So when they launched that program, they were taking people out of the Sears store and putting them into neighborhood offices.
4 is not a prime number. 1, 2, and 3 are.
So
unprime.
But there was a bulk of people that were 2-man offices because, you know, there were some offices that they would take 6 months off, the agent, and the other agent would work 6 months. They'd do a change of the guard, say like in June. The other agent would go back to wherever they're in Canada, California, wherever they're at, and they would show up, you know, back in January. Hey, I'm here. Change of the guard, and that's how they work.
Craig would like that.
Yeah,
it's like Buckingham Palace. Is it Buckingham? Or...
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Buckins.
Fucking.
But, you know, over time is when my dad and myself made the decision to convert over to the current program that everyone's under, because you had the opportunity to do that. And at the time, there's a lot of incentives that were throwing at you to do that. So I didn't have 5 years vested, so I lost my retirement, whatever it was, but I got my profit sharing back when I converted. But I had 4.5 years of being an employee before I converted over to the current program that we're in. And my dad got to retire twice. Dad got to retire as an employee. And then 6 years later, when I purchased him out of his side, he got to retire again. So there was only a handful of agents across the country, a little more than a handful, maybe less than 50, that got to do the same thing.
Double retirement.
Sweet.
So they got the double dip.
That's pretty good. Double dip.
And they
say it doesn't exist.
It does. It existed. So
I have some kids, and when the ranch dressing comes around, there's a lot of double dipping.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I don't want to do that.
I can imagine.
So they double dip carrots or celery? What they double dip?
Anything. And then when they run out of something, it's hands. Don't go. If you see ranch out at the Feltman house, don't do it.
Don't touch it.
Avoid it. So Todd, how were those first few years? How was it going into? I mean, 31 years, man.
Do you know what's scary? 31 years later, I can still tell you my first auto account and my first property account. My first property account was Janet Discant, a condo we wrote. And my auto account was a doctor and his wife, and I spoke with her, you know, she called in for a quote one time. And right when I was so I came back, got my agent number, I was cool to go because you were sandbagging some stuff before you came back from home office training. But you sandbag a couple stuff as soon as you got your number. Mine was tax day when I got hired in 1990. So when I got back in the office, I wrote the policy effective that day. But that was Dr. Arialis, and he had, of all things, he had an NSX that we insured. Had to get an exception for it, but we had that and 3 other cars. But that was my first auto account. I had them for probably, 20-something years. And he retired and he moved out of state. And my other client, she had sold a condo and she moved, I think, back up to New Hampshire, wherever she was from after, 25 years. But those are my first 2 accounts. And they when you write them, they stick in your head on stuff. So
we all
Did you
talk
get to
about
drive the NSX?
That's a good question.
It's very important.
Do you know our company we can't name? They were the first ones that had to pay a claim out on the NSX. A guy of all things in Arizona lost control of it and backed it into a guardrail and it peeled it like a can opener. And so they had to do it. So when we insured another one that came in, I had some clients that were medical equipment guys, and these guys were just loaded. And so they bought the first one in South Florida. And so I knew the guys from a friend of mine who had their other stuff, and no one would touch them except for our favorite company. So we went up and insured it, and it was a big deal. And got pictures with the dealership guy, Rick Case at the time.
Wow.
And there's no one in Florida, and it was pretty cool to see. And wrote it, gave him the policy, off he went. So
it was a good question.
Yeah, they were cool cars.
They were.
Yeah, that might have been the first year it came out, right? 90.
Yes,
I think it
Matter
was.
of fact, my brother's boss, who owned Circus, Mr. Bennett, he owned 4 of them. He was in Southern California. He was in Huntington, but he had 4 ones that he ordered. He had kept 2 in California and 2 in Las Vegas. He had a red one, a black one, a silver one, and I guess let me see, red, black, silver, and white, I believe.
Probably white. Yeah.
Yeah, those are colors they had.
In Huntington Beach?
Yeah.
I was in Huntington Beach at that time.
Yeah.
I was 11 years old.
Yeah. He also had some other cars, but of all the cars that he really liked the NSX. He had Ferraris. He had, he had his big Beamer. I guess at the time was what, the 850. I guess the big sedan, the road cruiser.
Oh yes, yeah.
Those things were like, those are land yachts, man. Those are like the old the Coupe de Villes and stuff, the Cadillacs from the 70s. The big land yachts. So
I was probably watching a little Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on the couch right around then.
Mm.
Yeah, because
cool,
like
man.
my brother, when I was there, I'd visit him, and he'd make, I don't know, what was it, like 200 miles, 210 miles from Vegas to LA, depending on where you're at in LA. He'd make it like 2.5 hours doing like freaking 100, running down the road in the new Beamer. So, because it was never driven. He had so many cars, and never really got driven. So he'd say, he'd flip the keys to my brother, "Hey, Tom, go drive it." So we'd like, "See ya." We'd haul down to LA for the weekend and, and come back.
So what was it like selling back then? And then how's it changed?
Well, one thing, again, I'm not proud of it, but at the time when you do this, and you guys will laugh. So over time, when you learn to go to see someone on a call, people say a call, you mean like you're calling them? No. We go see the people at their work, or you go see them at their house.
Right.
Because the agents who worked in the booth only worked really 4 hours. You had 4 hours on, and then your shift, depending on how many agents were in the booth. In our case, we had 3 agents. So before I became an agent, I would be the gopher. I'd go for this, go for that, go see the other agents that were in there, and I'd go and do all the stuff. And that's how you kind of, you got into the business, and you learn how to do stuff, and you learn how to write the application or the triplicate, with the carbon copies. You go down and you're writing on the steering wheel as you're going, looking up, and you're writing and looking up, not making sure you're having accidents. But I had a cell phone at the time. I had the old Motorola brick phones, which were huge. You could be 6 feet under and get a phone call with one of those babies, but you could be anywhere with that. But we'd have that, and you call the people ahead of time. They think you were so cool, calling from a cell phone. Say, "Hey, I'm on my way. I'll meet you like in 10 minutes." "Oh, cool, come on up." But I'd go to businesses. I'd go to people's homes. I'd go to people that were on a vacation home that they'd still come by the office, but for the most part, in my case, having disposal, being a producer for the 3 agents, I'd go out and I'd see people, but I'd write it on the way down. And as I got my other car later on, a 6-speed with it was a little bit tougher to do, because you'd have to eat at the same time, drive with your, not being proud of it, but drive with your knees, shift, still write the application, because, you're on your way down. And once you got there, whip out your briefcase, go over the policy with them, make sure they learned everything. They knew what bodily injury was. They knew what property damage was. They knew what, in Florida, PIP was, collision and comp, make sure they had rental, all that stuff. So stuff that you learn then kind of carried with you as you go, older in my career, but you just had to do it and make sure people got the right coverage. But we did many of that. I mean, you'd see them on weekends. You'd go on a Saturday. When Hurricane Andrew came in '92, we were out there. I worked, it was a full day up until like probably 8, 9 o'clock at night on Saturday, seeing people, because we didn't know what was going to happen. This huge Cat 5 storm is heading right to Florida, South Florida. And they're all telling you it's going to be doomsday, man. Just, go out and take pictures, because nothing you're going to see is going to look like that after. And sure as heck it was. When you go down to like the South Dade, all our landmarks were gone. We went down after the hurricane had come ashore, and we were in the northern part of the county, but it struck the southern part of the county. You ever been like the Homestead down there? But that's where it came to shore. And it did a whopper. It totaled stuff left and right. Frame homes just blew them down. The ones that weathered the storm the best were the older homes, the ones built in the 40s and 50s and early 60s, because they just built them different. Even though it was a stick home, it was just constructed so much better than they were at the time in the 80s and 90s with the cookie cutter homes, and you could see that. So another friend of mine who was in the insurance business as well, we were down on one of the western roads that you can go to, because the Everglades is on one side and then everything else is on the other side. So as we're going down, we were behind the Corps of Engineers waiting for them to clear the road. So it took us 3 hours to go probably 20 miles, because we're behind the Corps of Engineer as they're, with the bulldozers pushing everything off the road as you went down. And you go like maybe a half a mile and sit again and wait. So, but at the time with the cell phones, once the towers were down, you just lost kind of communications. For us to be on time, we had a 3-hour window to be on time to see somebody. You'd see like maybe 4 people in a day.
Wow.
Jeez.
And then we, at the time, Allstate would give us those cheesy, magnets for the side of the car. So they put them, we'd slap them on the side of the car to go through all the roadblocks. The cops, okay, come on, he's insurance, let him through. So like, cool, man. So then we go down and see people, and then on the way back, you'd forget and go through a neighborhood. And one instance I did that and I forgot. I'm driving back and this little kid comes out, in the middle of the street, puts his hand up. Like, hey, what's up? Hey, my daddy says you had to give me a check. I don't think so, Junior. I don't know who you are, but because we were given ALE checks, additional living expense checks. We had the offer like $5,000. That's one thing they should bring back.
Right?
They should bring those back, honestly, because it would bring so much for customer relations. But that's another topic. But anyway, they give us a whole stack of checks. I mean, we're talking like that thick of checks, and you go down. So on a tail of that story was in our office where we're at the northern part of the county, it was pretty easy to get to with the roads. And we're in there, I don't know, maybe a month after the hurricane, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, comes in our office along with the Metro-Dade police officers. And we're like, wow, what do we do? It was jammed. Our office probably had, I don't know, 10 people in it waiting for people to, get checks, and the claims people were at our office and stuff like that. So, friends of mine down in South Dade, their offices were decimated. I mean, they had no power. They had no computers, nothing. And they come in on a piece of paper. And, you go in and say, what's your policy number? Oh, here's my policy, or I don't know what it is. Well, where's your address? And most of the time they went to the agent that wrote the policy. It's different now, but at the time, if you were in South Dade and you wrote, most of the people you were in your like 25-mile radius around your office. Could be 50, but whatever it might be. But the core of your people were around your office and knew who you were, and you knew them. So when they came in, oh yeah, it's Mrs. Jones, no problem, or it's Mr. Garcia, no problem. I know we had the microfiche cards at the time. So if you had a generator, you pull up the microfiche card and you go down and look at it, and okay, here's his policy, here's the policy number, and go from there. But if someone came in your office that you didn't know, you'd almost have to take their word that here's my policy number. And with the fraud, then the lady as the FDLE was in our office, the reason why in their office was this lady got tipped off. She was in our 12th office to pick up ALE checks. Wow. She was waiting to pick up her 12th check at our office, and they busted her. $60,000. That was a lot of money back in 1992.
Still a lot of money.
So they busted her, had her in cuffs and stuff like that. And, basically she was going around because people were paying their policy numbers on their house. That was the way the adjusters would find, your home. They put the claim number, once they were there, they put the claim number on it, which you think like, how stupid is that? Like, hey, I'm going to go to Feldman's. He's got Allstate. Oh, look, here's his claim number too. It's on his house. So that's how you could do it. But, at the time when Hurricane Andrew, again, when it came, the company brought us in and said, we have a great new product right now. We're going to have one or two adjusters be able to adjust a whole block of people. No problem. We're like, wow, what's that? GPS was coming into vogue at the time. And so they come out and do it. Now, one thing that they forgot was people weren't there. They're not hanging out in their home waiting for their adjuster to come. They're everywhere. They're securing, there's people going from South Dade to Boca Raton, which is, 50, 60 miles to the north. They're securing places to stay because, again, when a Cat 5 rolls into your town, not a whole lot of things are standing. So these people were going north, and so a lot of people just weren't there when the adjusters come through. So this little plan of having one adjuster handle a whole block just failed after about a couple of days because they couldn't get back. But you had a rotation of adjusters always happening. A personal friend of mine I grew up. Yeah, a personal friend of mine I grew up with. We wrote his policy. I'm gonna say like August 10th. Andrew hit on August 24th. I'm gonna say like August 10th. Did it COD then, which you could do. Wrote it for like $55,000, whatever it was. Back then we had guaranteed replacement cost. You had full RC. You had, no hardly any deductibles, $500 deductible and everything. So I wrote it. His wife, like 2 days before the hurricane came, finally put the check in the mail. But that $255,000 paid him about $495,000 at the end. It was all done. But to get that, though, he went through 5 different adjusters. His house got stripped because looting was happening, because they were in short supply. Not looting like we just went through with everything with Floyd, but looting as in short of materials. You'd be in the house, they're pulling electrical out of the conduits. They're taking tin caps off the roof. They're taking PVC up out of the yard, for your sprinkler system. Houses were just like stripped because drywall was all rotten and stuff. So you didn't do a whole lot with that. you couldn't use it. But, you know, just there was a backlog of just basic materials. It was reported that there was a Home Depot down there just opened up a couple years before. That Home Depot accounted for 1% of the whole sales in the Home Depot system, the one in South Dade. That's how busy it was. But on the flip side, insured said, "To hell with it, man. I'll get my money." They bought Harleys, they bought boats, they bought cars, they bought, you know, vacation homes. They left the state. Hey, it's not mine. You deal with it. You know, they're selling it for basically dirt, their homes. We had one client who sold that home that she sold to another guy, turned around and sold it 8 more times because she lived right around the corner. It was one of her investment homes, and she sold it. And the company had paid her fair limits on it. It wasn't a total. It was built super strong, but it had a lot of damage. And I want to say she sold it for, I think, like $50-something thousand, $52,000. Had it insured for like 90. So she got her money, was paid for. She sold it, and then every time she would walk by, she kind of see different people in it. And, you know, because we didn't have really, like you have internet right now to trace who's buying what. But at the time, she said it sold 8 more times. Each time they would, like, the roof lifted off because her husband was a contractor. And she goes, "Todd, look, that's the roof lifted off. Here's where it's at." And we're like, "Holy crap, you could stick your hand in there." You know, the trusses from the top of the CBS block. And then when you go the next time, it's all covered up and stuff. And then finally by the 8th time, you couldn't even tell, like it was brand new again. But that's how people were just flipping them as fast as they could do them.
Wow.
So saw a lot of fraud. It was kind of sad. You'd see it, but you know, people do desperate things in desperate times.
And all of that happened during Andrew.
Yes.
So were there other, like, I mean, I didn't know we were going to go down the hurricane rabbit hole, but were there other big hurricanes? I know there was, like, so there was Rita and Katrina were the big ones, but those were New Orleans, right?
Well, Hugo in '89, again, not to be my time sensitive, but '89 kind of woke up a lot of people because it just missed Charleston, and it was a pretty strong storm. And so one of the aftermaths of and you'll laugh when I say it, but one of the aftermaths of, at the time, we could write Miami Beach basically within maybe 500 feet. So basically you have a home, you can write the home across the street, but not the home on the water. And then with Hugo, they said, "Hey, we can't do this anymore. It has to be 1,000 feet from the water." So you could still write, but that's how short side they were thinking at the time, that 1,000 feet was going to cure all of the storm coming on. Like, really,
150 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll be fine over here. It's back a football field.
But I'll tell you one thing: the company I go to bat with them every day. You ask me, they paid like no other company paid. They paid for people, you know, "Hey, Mr. Pretzinger, your home we have insured for 110. You got like 180,000. How would we give you 200? Does that satisfy you?" "Oh yeah, no problem." Wow. They didn't have to open it back up again. So there's a lot of goodwill. The State Farm, Brand X, they were holding, you know, depreciation back and making people replace stuff, and people were just ticked off. But it changed the landscape dramatically.
What's the
perception? They realized that they can almost have the company be bankrupt. That started in Florida. What we, you know, fast forward another like 3 or 4 years, we went to what they call PUPs, standalone property insurance, you know, carriers. But that changed the landscape tremendously.
So a question I have is, what was the perception of the big carriers back then to compare with how they are now, and the way people perceive the importance of that? Is it just as important as today as it was back then in the perceived eyes of?
Well, keep in mind, Florida had really been hit, had a really big hurricane. I'm going back to the 60s, maybe. We had Hurricane David like in '77. I was like, I don't know, middle school, I don't know, whatever it was, eighth grade, I guess, going into 8th grade. So that's when it hit. And we thought it was pretty cool because it rained a lot, and we're, you know, going out in the streets and puddle jumping and crap like that. But that was a big rain event. And then really until like 77, up until there a lot of scares, but Andrew is the one that really changed the landscape, and it really made people think about what their policy had covered. At the time, it was all bells and whistles, man. I mean, you didn't have all of this junk out there, like, you know, an ACV policy. And I mean, when someone gave you an, you know, the company policy, it was fully covered. There was no gaps. You didn't have a lot of gaps. The only way you could do it is if you just didn't write it for somebody. I mean, you had stuff like that. But basically, when you go out and write a policy, say, hey, Mr. Feltman, I'm giving you our Cadillac of a policy. It'll cover you. And I want to, from a cost standpoint, say it's, I don't know, we did one for the hurricane. We did a house for like 410,000. The premium was 405 for the year. Now that's a down payment, but that's how cheap it was getting. And then prior to that, as there was so much pressure on the carriers to compete against each other, and rates were just being driven down so much because they had a hurricane. And then once that hit, rates just started going up big time.
Because
but
all the cash reserves are gone, right?
To answer your question, now I think you can probably strip down, you can cater, good, better, and best policy. At the time, you really had the Cadillac, and then you had maybe a Chevrolet. You didn't have going from a Mercedes-Benz to like a Yugo now that you can. You didn't have this big scale of policies.
What was the difference between the Cadillac and the Chevrolet?
A lot of it was just the coverages and hands they gave. Like when you ever come across a Chubb policy, it's kind of the same thing at the time. What policy we sold then was kind of like a Chubb policy now. You didn't have to worry about stuff. It gave you a lot of extra coverages. It gave you stuff. You didn't have to worry. It gave you unlimited additional living expense. So if you were out of your house for a year, you had some. Matter of fact, we had one in the Florida region. We had one in being paid still from Andrew. It happened in 2004. 14 years later, this guy was still getting additional living expense on his policy. It wasn't designed for that because he was in a dispute with the company, but they still had to keep on paying. So once Andrew once he got all the claims got paid and everything was closed out, then they started filing for different, taking off guaranteed replacement costs. You don't have that anymore. You still have replacement costs on contents, but you didn't have this, hey, we insure your house, Mr. Feltman, for $225,000. If it costs $395,000 to replace it, we'll do that. That was guaranteed replacement cost. That's what it meant.
That's awesome. I kind of want to switch gears here for a moment.
Yeah, man.
And after 31 years, sounds like you went through a lot of crazy times, some good.
Yes.
Why retire now?
Well, when my dad retired in 2000, why I told you the story about Hurricane Andrew was in the mid 90s. Not just our company, but a lot of the companies started really not wanting to write anymore. They deserted the state of Florida, and they had subsidiaries that came in, and they were giving you less coverages. And then also in that time, say around circa 1995 to like 1997, the state in Florida, it was called the FRPC-JUA then, the residual property casualty underwriting market. They went from basically only dealing with property, say in the Keys, that people needed windstorm coverage. It'd be equivalent to CAA for you guys. It's the California Earthquake Authority. It would be the same thing that the foundation of the JUA was prior to Hurricane Andrew. Nobody really wrote in it except for people you couldn't get coverage for. So fast forward 3 years after that, they went from having maybe 50,000 policies to over 1 million policies because carriers were coming in and canceling. State Farm, Prudential, MetLife at the time was there, St. Paul, Hanover, Travelers, you name them, and they're all leaving the state as fast as they could. And then the insurance commissioner tried to stop them, but that, okay, great, that lasted for a year. So basically at the end, we were left with a big mess of takeout companies. And they came in, they formed. You only needed about $5 million of wealth at the time. Your net worth could be $5 million. And guess what? Hey, Mr. Pretzinger, you own an insurance company today. How about that? Let's start writing business.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to depopulate the JUA at the time because it was getting too big. It was over 1 million policies, and it was just becoming the elephant in the room that they would talk about, but nobody really do anything about it. So our company at the time got into JUA to start writing business, and we were writing it on paper, no computers then. We were writing as fast as we could write it down and doing stuff because there was no closings. Because after Hurricane Andrew, basically the market, there was no insurance company that was writing in the state of Florida for 60 days. That was in like 1993. So for 60 days, the E&S, the excess and surplus market, was writing all the new homes. And a lot of realtors, we didn't know what was going on. And our company was the last one to write. We wrote 181 policies in 2 days because we knew it was coming. They told us, hey, January 19th, we're stopping to write policies, 1992 or 93. Yeah, 93. We're going to stop writing policies. And they did. They stopped writing because they were the last carrier to write. We're doing people CODs and, hey, you think about that house you're over in Orchid Drive? I'll write you. Just write it. No problem. You know, we don't know what's going to happen. So that's why our office alone wrote that many policies, but we wrote that many policies in that 2-day period. And then once the JUA came into formation, then everyone was writing, and that's what ballooned and blossomed that to grow to, you know, the 1.2 million policies in 2 or 3 years. So part of I'm telling you that story as to why when my dad retired in 2000, prior to 2000, the 96, 97, 98, the takeouts companies were flourishing because they were being formed to depopulate the big elephant in the room, which is the JUA. Once that was starting to happen, we could write it for a year, and then after that, they would take it from us. Hence, not because of their takeout, but that was the joke, they'd take it from us. And our company wouldn't let us represent those carriers. So we would come in and write, you know, at the time, our checks probably were $3,000 and $4,000 a month a piece. The lower premiums at the time, that gives you the volume of business we were writing. I mean, you could almost weigh it, say, yeah, it's worth $100. Yeah, it's $3,500 this month. You know, you could weigh it because everything was all sent to you, and comp statements were all paper. You know, none of this electronic stuff. So, with that said, when Dad started to retire, he had formed an independent at the time in 2000, mainly to go back and get the business that we lost from the takeouts. And once we did that, we still were in South Florida, and again, the ideology of writing had changed tremendously to write in South Florida versus, say, Central Florida and North Florida. You know, you go in at the same time in North Florida in the late 90s, you could write like Northern California, like you guys have in Southern California. You could write all day long and have no restrictions because the premiums are so low. The threat of a hurricane really wasn't there in Central and North Florida at the time. Now, again, that's their short thinking. But so again, as Dad built the independent up in 2000, we started taking all these people back. And then I said, you know what, why don't we get more carriers to write that we're doing home, no auto, just home we focused on. So when we did that in 2000, at the time you could still work out of your house. So my wife had worked for Cigna Dental Health, and she got laid off right when we got married in 91. So really for 3 or 4 years, she didn't do a whole lot. I mean, not a whole lot as far as work-wise. She did a lot as a mom. I mean, she raised our kids and everything. So that's not to short side her job at the time, but that's something, you know, as a mom, that's a whole another job, and don't pay enough for that. But so in 2000, and once we got all the kids, you know, they were born and raised 3, 4, or 5 years old, she helped out by writing the policies, the independent policies. And over time, she loved it. She could stay in her PJs all day long and write, you know, 15, 20, 30 policies in a day, because that's how many stuff was coming in, you know, because the market was just kind of in turmoil. So in that time, we grew, we joined an organization. She did join an organization to help out with carriers. And we went from, out of 34, we went from 0 being last to number 1 in probably 18 months with that. And then that led me to springboard to get out of South Florida. I've been wanting to get out of South Florida. Not that I didn't like it, just from a business standpoint, you can never grow. It's like trying to grow in LA County. I mean, what are you going to write in LA County? You're not going to write a whole lot of business. Property-wise, you know, you just couldn't write it. Same, we were in the same boat. So let me go north. So I went north into Orlando, looked to buy an agency, had one, deal fell through for whatever reason. And then finally in 03, I pulled the trigger to buy one in 04. I bought an agency. And that was a $11 million shop that I bought at the time. And wow, it was, I mean, you pinch me, I'd gone to heaven, man. I was like, man, this is woo. You know, we were about a $5 million shop at the time, you know, around 2004, the Miami office, and I had a $10 million one. I'm like, man, this is cool. We're going to just start minting money, you know? I mean, because you could write property all day long. As long as you want to write property in North Florida, Central Florida, you could write it. Auto, no problem. Cross-sell it, no problem. We had like 25% cross-sell on auto on our homeowner book. It was almost, I mean, like they always say, you know, shooting balls, I guess, on the water where it might be at the carnival, the same thing. We were just, hours or anything would stop you even the minute of the day to write more new business. So we were writing probably about 240, 250 items a month at the time. Again, only having, you know, you had All-Star at the time. That was it. So you write them COD all day long, and that was cool. And then I had 7 glorious months until Hurricane Charlie came. And once Hurricane Charlie came, it was like shades of Andrew all over again. They shut down, company shut down the state, and then, you know, fast forward from 2000 and I don't know, 2005 to, you know, where we are now is kind of the same. You just, they're in the property market, they're not in the property market. So you kind of had to grow, you know, the brokered business to really make it grow. And then you weren't really helping the company bottom line, because you're helping your bottom line as an agency, but you weren't helping the company bottom line, because other than getting a, you know, a percentage of the premiums from the carrier, they wasn't helping the company out. So we became our own little island, so to speak. Florida was.
Crazy.
So
that's like California.
Right. So then that kind of, once they kind of got their teeth sharpened a little bit in Florida, the company then expanded other states to do the brokering. So we're one of the few states that own 100% of our business, 99.9 of it. We own, the agent owns it. So in other states, like maybe you guys in California, I think you might own the rights to maybe one or two of the companies. Everything else, Advantage owns. So, and with that, that kind of changed the demographics going forward on the agencies, because, you know, you could still write and get paid for it, but in the end of the day, personally, I'd rather have ownership than compensation, because you can control ownership. You can't always control compensation. So,
right.
So
Crazy,
when I left, fast forward, when I left on 4/1, I basically closed on a Friday, went next door on a Monday, then next door. So I didn't really have to really start over again.
4/1 of this year.
Yep.
How was that? I mean,
it's sad. You know, over time, again, you guys coming in, how many years you have with the company, Jason?
3.5.
Craig?
12.
So Craig came in in the end where you still were having some meetings. You still got to see people, whether it be, you know, twice a month, once a month, whatever it was, you got to see them, and, you know, you go out and do stuff. Over time, pretty much I'd say in the 90s, late 90s is when the company started to change, when they weren't as many meetings. Their camaraderie wasn't there as much. It was almost like a forced, you know, spreading out of the agents, where you couldn't talk as much anymore. And with that, so to say, how was it when I left? I missed, you know, that, you know, again, since 1966, there really wasn't a Tomlinson that was in the company anymore. And that's fine. Everything comes to an end. Not that it's, you know, we'll bring out the Kleenex box here and shed some tears, but, you know, it's just part of the camaraderie that you missed with that. But I think the pluses of leaving outweighed the positives of staying, if I can say it that way. So that's one reason why I made a decision to leave.
Awesome. And
everything, you know, runs its course. Again, I don't, with the company, I went to a lot of places around the world. I went to a lot of places in the United States. I made a very good living. I put my kids through school, you know, you name it, to have that. I was very fortunate. I mean, we worked at it as everyone else does, but you make us what you put into it is what you get out of it. So I have, you know, nothing but good things to say. Don't always agree with, like anything else. People work for big corporations. You don't always agree with how they run them, but for the most part, I think the core of the people that were there, you know, 20, 30, even 40 years, really is the ones that you kind of miss talking with. We just had an agent who had 60 years with the company. He passed away last month.
Oh,
60 years.
That's crazy. You don't see that often anymore.
No. You would think that the CEO might want to send a letter, I don't know, a card, something. Even fly down and be at the funeral. I don't know. I mean, not many people have 60 years with a company. I mean, I don't know what your parents did per se, but they lasted that long with a company, much less, but 60 years, I'm like, damn, I got another 30 years. I retired 31. I don't know if I could do another 30 years again. So,
so what do you see for yourself the next 30 years? Like, after 30 years of grinding away, being blown away by multiple hurricanes, helping people.
I like to build stuff. So to me, I like building agencies. I'm not the best at running them. My wife will tell you, and our office manager will tell you the same thing. But, you know, you got to find what you do good in life. I still like the day-to-day, I say the grind, but I still like to build it. I still like to see, you know, how you can grow an office, how you can grow a book of business. Mine on the independent side, there's a lot more carriers. We probably deal with over 80 carriers. So you have different underwriting guidelines, whether it's E&S, you have standard carriers. So that's the downside, that you got to learn all that. Before, we only really had one set of guidelines, as you guys have. I mean, you have other ones, but for the most part, you know it forwards and backwards on whether something's going to qualify or not. But now with having that many carriers, that's, you kind of pride yourself on knowledge. When you meet with the reps that come in, you want to not feel dumb and kind of stupid in front of them, but you got to know your stuff a lot more on the IA side than you do on the captive side. So I think the challenge of that is what keeps me going.
That's awesome.
I don't feel 56. I know I have to remind myself. I see people on TV and it's like, oh my God, look how old that guy looks. My wife says, hey, he's your age. Like, oh, sorry. But it's just, I try to stay in shape. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was living in South Florida at the time, I didn't mention this, but when I bought the Orlando office, I was still in Fort Lauderdale. So I flew on Southwest from 2004. So January of 2004, 5 and 6, I flew pretty much every day. That was my bus to work, was flying Southwest.
Wow.
And so I got to know Southwest was a wonderful company. Fantastic customer service. You ask for something, they'll drop what they have to do. They'll get you on. I missed, maybe on one hand, I probably missed maybe 4 flights, and they were my own doing with that. But with that said, when I'd fly, the way the ticket system is right now, if you guys fly Southwest, probably being in the Southwest, you probably fly them a lot, or maybe they used to. But at the time, at midnight, you check in and you get an A number to stand in line. You had A1 to whatever it was, back to, I think it's 28. I guess there's A through 28. So with that said, I'd be like 12:01 a.m. You go and check in, press that send button, and you get like, oh damn it, I got 2, or oh yeah, I got 1. But we all got to know. There was probably 15, 20 of us of customers of Southwest that got to kind of know each other, because I had a lot of car guys that I got to know that would fly up for the auction. They'd fly up, do what they had to do, buy cars, and turn around and go back on the next flight. So for me, I was either on this 6:05, 6:15, 6:35, wherever they change during the season. I would be on that first flight, and I'd either be in row 11, which is emergency exit, or row 17. Those are my 2 rows that I'd be on, because I knew going in where I was going to sit. So I kind of had a joke with my wife. I said, where the plane ever goes down, I'm in row 11 or row 17. So usually I'm on away from the sun. That's how picky you'd be, like finicky. You get on there like, ooh, the sun's on that side. I want to be on that side of the plane. The hell with that. But get to know a lot of flight crews and stuff. But anyway, on the way back, they can serve you 2 beers in 27 minutes of flying time. I can tell you that, because I did it so a lot. But anyway, when I get back home, my kid's a little bit younger then. I won a keg machine in a bet with a good friend of mine. I'm a huge Dolphin fan, and he was a huge Cowboy fan. And every time they play, or I'm an LSU grad, and he's a Notre Dame grad, so we'd always have this bet. And at the end of the year, we'd kind of, who had the most wins and losses, and we'd kind of square up on a bet. And one of them that year was a keg machine, so I won it. And so when I'd come home after flying, I'd get home, pretty much, like clockwork. The flight gets in at 4:45 or 5:15. I'm home by 5:45 or 6. Get home, come in, and lo and behold, my kids would have, hey, let's get a beer for daddy. I get a 20-ounce glass mug. Let's have one for daddy. And I drink, half of it. I had 3 kids. So the next one would, I do it. So she'd get it, bring it back. Hell, before long, I'd have probably close to 30 ounces of beer. I'd sit down, 3 beers where I'd sit down to eat. So that's kind of where I gained a little weight from, that 04 and 5, flying up there all the time. But aside from that, just wonderful memories. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. If I had to fly, here to Dallas, or Cali would be a little hard, but I wouldn't mind going to Cali.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, come out sometime.
Boundaries don't bother me to travel. You don't want to do it every day. But I know there's people that fly. There's people that fly L.A., New York. Once a week they're flying. They stay the week, fly home on the weekend, turn around and fly back. Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. So Todd, what is the number one piece of advice that you give anybody coming into this industry with your 31 years of knowledge? You've seen it all. You've seen changes. What would you advise if young Todd was coming in today?
learn your craft the first year, and then start buying as much as you can while you can, when you can. Buy. Buy. Because you will never, ever. I don't care who you are, but you won't last long if you do it, but you will get terminated. But you gotta do it and buy every year. Buy, like another agent says, you have to put yourself in a position to where the opportunity comes that you can pull the trigger and buy. You got to do it. Both you guys do that. I applaud you guys for that. But you got to bust your ass and you got to buy when you can. You might not think it's a good buy, but it's so much easier. The advice being, it's easier to buy it and build it than it is to write it and make it grow, because you can't do it now. Good old days. You write something, let them throw it in the wall. They run an MVR. And they'll be like 60 days before they run MVR. You're good. You didn't have to do it. You had written rejections then. So, it was a different time when you do it. Now you can't even push the bind button now because it won't take it. It'll say reject. Yeah. Then it was all paper. We'd have big envelopes that would come, these big yellow envelopes. You probably heard stories of them, the middle envelopes. And it would go, in our case was the Jackson Regional Operations Center, the Jackson Rock, Jackson, Mississippi. You get to know the ladies there. You'd be on the phone with them. They call you. Hey, I can't read your right. What's that VIN number? What's that digit? They couldn't. Everyone had different writing. It was different.
It's nuts.
That is nuts.
But I'll tell you one thing: you had a loss. If I signed your application at 2:55 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, and you had an accident at 3 o'clock, you had coverage. Not like now where it says, "Oh, we'll go to the next day." And actually, Mr. Pretzinger, when did you actually sign the application? Oh, he signed it. He signed it in the morning. Oh, okay. You don't have that anymore. Now, you gave it to the client. That was their proof that they had coverage.
Wow. Do you think it's because people are more scammy now? You think people are
scammy? They're pretty
scammy.
I think with technology, they can control a lot more behind the scenes than they used to. With insurance, I think. Not so much on the E&S market. The excess and surplus lines market is a little bit different. There's still the core values that the integrity is, not to say that we don't have it when you do electronic. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying just when you deal with the London crowd and the true history of Lloyd's and stuff, it's your integrity. If you say you're going to bind it and you bind it, you're on it. And you say you're going to do $50 million worth of homeowners premium in a year, you're going to do it. You're going to do it.
That's awesome.
I think
different times.
It's different times. Not to say it's scammy, but I think right now, to a degree, we are glorified order takers. Maybe you don't feel it that way, but in essence, it's hard to go out and generate where the good old days and say, hey, I'm going to go out and write Beverly Hills, but outside of Beverly Hills, I'm going to go write in Westwood, for example. I know I can write some homes in there. There's a stretch of homes I can write in there. They meet the criteria. They're all built in the 90s. I can do all that. Now you have technology. You don't have to leave your office. You can go on the computer and just, hey, let me pull up a heat map and see the homes where they're built right there. I can go to download that into this thing and go to my rater, push a couple buttons. It goes to the rater and it sends out the quotes, and then boom, I can follow up with them. I put them in my text in my rater or my CRM, and it comes back and it says, hey, I'm having a chat. A quote bot's having a chat with Mr. Smith. He doesn't even know who he's talking with. Thinks he's talking with someone in the office. So that's where I think the next level is going. I'm fascinated by InsurTech. I'm like a little kid in a candy store. You mentioned technology and insurance. Kind of weird, but that's something that kind of gets me going.
Yeah, bots are very interesting. Very interesting.
I think the old legacy carriers are gonna really have to improve their technology. Not just our company, but a lot of companies.
Yeah.
The annual guard, hey, write us because we're A+15. Who cares?
Yeah, I think that the world of giving fluff out and just saying that I'm not saying it's fluff, but the descriptions you have of how it used to work, people don't care anymore. They don't care. I could say, hey, I'm going to come out to your house and sit at your table and explain the stuff. They'll be like, hey,
are you high?
I don't want you in my house.
High?
Like, you smoking crack over there? No, we don't.
Who are you?
You just unsold me.
Yeah, are you
Yeah.
Jacob?
Don't
Are
want you
you
up.
wearing khakis? No, I'm wearing khakis, but I'll come see you. I'm driving a white truck. You'll see me in the driveway, but you don't
Right.
do that anymore.
They don't want it.
Hey, we have
don't
one of
want
my dad's
anyone.
clients. We have one of my dad's clients. He wrote at a home show, 1967. We still have him insured. He was 21 years old. And he came to see my dad.
Yeah.
Wow.
See, he's
So,
never
sure.
leaving. Never
I spoke
leaving.
to him the other day. It's like, it's so weird. He's like, you know how long we've been with you? I know. I was, what, 3 when you wrote the policy with my dad. I know. You've seen me over the
It's
years.
amazing.
It's like family.
And I have some of those. I have some of those that have been with us for so long that they're never going anywhere. And it is interesting.
One thing that kind of frustrated me when you get, again, back to my thing about building it versus you writing it, and you'll never write, 10,000 customers. You're never going to write them. You can't. It's just physically impossible. You don't want to do it anyway. But when I had, over 15,000 clients at one time, I just feel bad because you could never get to all of them. You could never speak to them. The only way we get to them is you send them birthday cards. We'd send them out. That's the only way you could really get to them in masses. The staff knew who the people were for the most part, but it was hard to talk to the agent. You'd be there. I couldn't be in 2 places at once with it. Especially when I sold the Miami office and bought my North Florida office in Amelia. That was a little bit different, because I was the new fella, that came in. So they thought because I bought the business, I jacked the rates up. I just happened to be timing. It's like, man, that kind of sucks. But I think it's everything being cyclical. I think when you go back again and you write someone a handwritten card, a birthday card, your office doesn't be you. It goes a long way for a client. Maybe
100%.
not so much for the millennials per se, but I think it's still people when they want to be tinkled on, if I can say it in a good way. They still want to be, patronized. They still like that.
It's amazing. Like a true handwritten, because people can smell the fake. Like they have the fakeness. Fake handwritten. Like they know that's BS. But like a real one, like there's the only thing that my wife likes that I know that I'm gonna get, that she's gonna be happy when I get it, is Tiffany. Anything from Tiffany,
yes,
right? As long as it's from Tiffany. And the guy sends a handwritten thank you card, and then I tell her. I mean, she hates anytime I talk about marketing, but or sales, and I tell her, I go, look, this is like the reason I go back. Well, because you like it, and then that works out well. But also I go back here because this guy sends this thing, right? And she emailed him and said, hey, thank you for sending him those thank you cards. Keep sending them to him. But I mean, it's amazing. Like the actual handwritten card takes 3 minutes, and it's probably one of the best follow-up tactics that you can do in sales.
Correct.
Hands down.
We've talked about that before on here, and I think it goes back to just back to the basics of communication. All this stuff in technology can help us. It's a tool. But man, there's nothing like a conversation. Like, when was the last time a company called you to see how you're doing? Yes. You know what I mean? Or a handwritten note or anything like that. Like, or
just popped in their office. You go, hey, Joe, what's going on? I haven't seen you in a while. Hey, Todd, what's happening? But that's one reason why commercial, I think I enjoy doing commercial. Not that I almost enjoy more in doing personal lines, but commercial, you do relationships. Yeah. And you still have to go out, and it's tough when they have to leave you for whatever reason. I mean, you can't be the lowest all the time, and can't always have the best, or someone's always going to top you. But for the most part, on commercial, one reason why commercial hasn't been tech-wise, I guess, if you call it that way, is because it's hard to put that in a relationship, especially when you get into your larger accounts. You can hide behind tech all you want, but you still got to go out and see the client, especially in commercial. Yeah. Your larger accounts. Your larger accounts you can. So
yeah. Yep. Love it, man.
Well,
love it,
man. We have taken up way more than I thought we were going to of your time. So thank you so much for coming on. I hope everybody people are going to eat this up. This is awesome. So yeah, we'll see you on the deal.
Now, one thing again, I say one thing real fast. So one thing, since you asked me, since I left, I'm part of giving back. You do in the industry. I'm trying to build a network going. We've been doing it since 2014. We've been starting a network, so we help captives or people maybe that don't have the experience but have the wherewithal in sales that want to come in. So we have our own network that we start. We have like 10 offices right now that we have underneath us. So we help clients to do that. We help agents to do that. And it's not as easy as you think it is. People say, oh, well, when I leave, I'm going to take, all my book. I don't think so. They're not going to leave you. Hate to bust your bubble, but they're not going to leave you as many you think are going to follow you. But we help them. We provide a lot of stuff to them and like that. I know we're one of many that's out there, but that's one thing, getting to I want to build it. That's what kind of keeps me going to help do that. So,
how can they find that?
We're Branch Agency Solutions, the way it sounds.
Okay.
So we have 9 offices in Florida, one there. I got to redo my webpage, but right now we also have our own MGA. We help people out for private flood. We do mainly.
Oh, cool.
But a lot of the agents, there's a lot going on right now. Whether, again, I know the people from Brightway, I know the people from Goosehead. I mean, there's all different models out there that kind of want to, pull you this side or pull you that side, however you want to do it. But I always tell agents, and I'll be happy to speak to them, but you always have to look in the end. What are you leaving? Why are you leaving that entity? And where are you going to get to? Some people need a transition. Some people need a kick in the butt. Some people need to get their hand held a little bit. Some people want to coast. Hey, I'm 49. I'm tired of this crap. I don't want to do it anymore. So that's kind of what I like to do and help people out and kind of give back in a way with it. So if I can help anybody, it's there. They can reach out to me. But that's one
thing. How
about
your email?
To help out people.
So what's the email they could shoot you a message at?
Probably my initials. Since I'm the admin, it's anything, but I'm the admin. Okay. It's my initials, tt@branchagency.com.
There you go. Perfect. We'll throw that in the show notes. I think I always say that, and then we don't, but we will.
So
we will. So, and if we don't, we'll work on that. So thank you, Todd. Awesome to talk with you.
You got it, man.
Have a good one.
Hey, I want to see Alf in the background next time when I see somebody on there.
Know.
See Alf on the couch.
Yep. Love it.
All right, fellas.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Take care, man.
Hey, you've got to check out the Insurance Dudes Inner Circle coming soon, where you get extended interviews as well as live coffee talks in our private Facebook group. Join the mailing list today at theinsurancedudespodcast.com. Hey, thanks for checking out The Insurance Dudes. Hey, please subscribe. We got some really great stuff coming out.